Hi and welcome to SCW here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section, please. Like and share the video as well. It's time for your say because it's time for the Q&A, answering your questions in the wrestling community. If you want to get involved here on Ask SCW, please drop a comment here on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram or Facebook. All should be coming up on your screen right now. Leave the hashtag AskSCW. I know to include your question in the next video. As well as that, go and check out Wrestling Customs 24/7 custom-made championships for WWE, AEW, and much, much more. Fantastic designs, lifelike as well, up-to-date models as well, so make sure to go and check them out. But without further ado, today we've got questions on WWE, Impact, AEW, NXT, and much, much more. So plenty of reasons to stick around, so let's get straight in with our first question. Definitely the hot topic this week. 3 people asking about Johnny Bravo. Time World Order asking who shot Johnny Bravo. BCC WrestlePod also asking who shot Bravo. And Jamie the Controversial One Holmes also asking it. And for him, it's Ira Rosemary, as she didn't seem to be that concerned that he'd been shot and said that she had better ideas than to leave him at the altar. Or James Mitchell, of course, who may have not wanted Bravo in the family. So, yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. This is the biggest whodunit mystery since Who Shot Mr. Burns for The Simpsons in the 90s. Hopefully, it's not Maggie Simpson. But literally, you look at this and think to yourself that it was so much fun the way that this has been done throughout the episode. There was so much building up towards this where people were saying, this is a bad idea. People weren't feeling that weddings and wrestling go together. So it was like, I have a bad feeling about this. You look for the suspects throughout the night as well. You mentioned Rosemary there being one of them, saying that she had a better idea than to leave Johnny Bravo at the altar. This came from Tyre saying that she should leave Johnny Bravo at the altar since he's changed so much since planning and building up towards this wedding. You look with Fallah as well. You're dead to me. You're no longer my best man, of course, with the situation with the money that was stolen from Hernandez. Of course, this gives Hernandez and Reno Scum an idea of potentially to get involved also, because their belief was that Johnny Bravo had taken this money, or Fallah had taken it but given it to Johnny Bravo. And you mentioned there Father James Mitchell, the fact that there was history there with Rosemary, the fact that they've not been getting along. Could he have had something to do with it? What about Havoc? Havoc as well. She lost the match to Rosemary. That brought Father James Mitchell back, and she did not want him back. Nevaeh, of course, has been on Havoc's side. What about Su Yung? Her and, of course, Havoc had issues as well when it came to the recent situation with Father James Mitchell. So suspects galore of who and what it could be. I think my favourite outside of the box idea that I've seen is that it could have been Rikishi, because The Rock, of course, made his debut for Impact Wrestling, of course, with a video message for Ken Shamrock at Bound for Glory. And, of course, for Rikishi, The Rock made him do it. So that's definitely my favourite outside of the box answer that I've seen. But to give you a full answer of who I think it's going to be, and I'm going to say it's going to be none of those particular people, and I'm going to go with Crazy Steve. And here's my reasoning why. He actually walked Rosemary down the altar. They have previous history together in Decay. It would also be a sidestep from Rosemary as well, with the fact that, you know, I didn't do it. She can sort of play on that way. Maybe the fact that she has a hand in it doesn't mean that she was the guilty culprit. So I kind of feel like it's going to be someone that is going to be not an obvious suspect, but at the same time, I think it's going to be someone that is in and around this wedding party. Of course, Johnny Bravo has had so many people in and around on that wedding party as well. I mean, of course, you look at the likes there. I've said Crazy Steve, Johnny Swinger, the Swingman's been involved there. We've had, you know, Tennille Dashwood and Caleb with a K has been doing the photography for the wedding. We've had the likes of, you know, the Deaners have been part of it as well, and we're walking down the aisle also. So there's lots of different variables and lots of different ways this could go. It's going to be fascinating to see, because this is now the whodunit angle. They can build this for weeks, even months, leading up to the next pay-per-view. I must admit, I did see the wedding itself. I did think it was good because it was bad. It wasn't taken seriously. It was treated as a complete, you know, joke of a segment, and I love the fact that Impact kind of made it feel that way. And for me, for that reason, it became one of the better wedding segments that I've actually seen in pro wrestling history. The fact as well with Tommy Dreamer's scream of "no" at the end of it, that kind of, you know, the way that that was done, it was so bad, it was brilliant. So for me, I think it was good fun. It's certainly a big buzz talking angle this week. It seems to have a lot of people wanting to know who done it, which is great for Impact Wrestling. I think that a lot of people will be tuning in. As I say, my third first answer for it will be Crazy Steve for the reasons I gave there. I'd like to see a reunion of Decay, just a personal preference. I know we can't have Abyss back, but to have Rosemary and Crazy Steve together as a tandem, I think would be quite good. And I mean, that could actually set a program off with Rosemary and Taya Valkyrie as well, who could be defending the honour of Johnny Bravo. So there's lots of different ways this can go. I'm excited to see how it's going to play out. Kudos to Impact Wrestling, and yeah, it's got us talking. They've got a big story going on. Let's see how it's going to develop over the next number of weeks. Noob and Co of our next questions now here on Ask SCW, and what are your thoughts on Jey Uso turned heel? Any thoughts on the AEW Full Gear card? And do you think the real story of Asuka is to redeem herself throughout this year? Three very interesting questions there, and I'm going to take probably the more hot topic one as your first question there, which was Jey Uso turning heel this week on SmackDown. I feel it is the best storyline in WWE right now, without a doubt. Roman Reigns, Jey Uso. Since we last spoke about this last week, about the Hell in a Cell I Quit match, which was done fantastic as a storyline type match there. The I Quit stipulation went perfectly. Jey Uso has been built so well over the most recent months. You look with Jey Uso and say like that this guy was not even on TV. He was hosting a karaoke competition in the middle of the summer. He's gone from that to being seen as a genuine guy that is in and around the main event. He's someone this week that's beaten Daniel Bryan clean. Roman Reigns couldn't make him quit on 2 pay-per-view occasions, had to find outside of the box tricks to walk away still as Universal Champion. Jey Uso only quit at the pay-per-view to save his twin brother, not through the physicality done on himself. So Jey Uso's stock in WWE has risen. That next layer of the chapter saying you will have to fall in line, and Jey Uso, the pleading, and it's almost like I can't believe you did that to me. I can't believe it. And Roman Reigns saying he still doesn't get it. This is what I've got to do to be head of the table. This is what the face of WWE does. And Jey Uso, as the night obviously wore on, he obviously got it, and then he turned heel and showed Roman Reigns that he could be a part of that family. And of course, I think the real turning point of this, of where Jey Uso kind of saw it, was the fact that, you looked at the Wild Samoans at Hell in a Cell, and Roman Reigns had the support of the family. They were there showing Roman Reigns like, yeah, we support you with what you're doing. You are head of the table. And I think that sort of set through to Jey Uso, well, I've got to fall in line. And yeah, the family are in this. Maybe it's me who's looking at this at the wrong sort of angle. And I think that layer will hopefully come out over the next couple of weeks. They can try and build on this storyline further to really establish Jey Uso as a heel. I would have liked to have seen him reluctantly for a couple of weeks, done the bidding and not wanted to do it for a little bit longer. I think that would have had, pulling on heartstrings. I think that could have been a really nice way they could have gone with that. But at the same time, the fact they've done this and they've just pulled the trigger on it, because let's be fair, I think we all knew at one point that Jey Uso would fall in line. It will be interesting to see how he's booked going forward. Will he become now that upper mid-card guy that is going to be doing the bidding for Roman Reigns, but still quite creditable? Or is he going to start losing matches going forward? This is my fear now with Jey Uso. But as a storyline itself, it's been done absolutely fantastic. And I think that what they've done with Jey Uso has been, out of this world. It's not something I would have said 6 months ago, that you'd be looking at Jey Uso in this position thinking, yeah, this guy is in and around that upper mid-card main event area. He seems worthy and part of that Survivor Series team, and arguably I'd turn around and say that he's got actually right now the most to gain from that Survivor Series 5-on-5 match, because if Jey Uso is one of those superstars that wins for Team SmackDown, his stock goes up further and further, and you could almost see that Jey Uso could at one point be a contender. Dare I say, I think I'm speaking out of turn here for a lot of people, but you'd look at Jey Uso and say that'd be an outside bet for the Royal Rumble, because if he won and could get back into the picture for WrestleMania and win the title, man, you would make yourself a ready-made start. From that storyline from start to finish, what an incredible job WWE has done. Do I think that's going to happen? No. Do I think Team SmackDown at the minute would beat Team Raw? Yes. Will Jey Uso be a part of that? Potentially. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be very interesting how they're going to take the storyline going forward. But so far, it continues to have thumbs up from me. I'm loving what they're doing with Jey Uso. They've gone from a non-believer, or certainly as a single-star non-believer, to fully invested, and can't wait to see what is going to happen next. And let's tackle Asuka next, because we've got the 2 WWE questions, 1 AEW question. I think Asuka kind of did that earlier this year when she became Raw Women's Champion. The problem is since it's been very lackluster, and I think that WWE still has a bit of a problem getting a plan in place because from the draft to Hell in a Cell, there wasn't really time to build a proper program up for Asuka. We look at things since then. Now we've got Survivor Series. We've again got Asuka against Sasha Banks or against Bayley, which we've seen so many times over the summer. We don't need to see it again. I think it will remain Sasha Banks. An early prediction, it's very early prediction at this stage. I think Sasha wins at Survivor Series. I don't see Asuka winning it. So Asuka needs to then, like you say, perhaps a bit of redemption. Once again, it feels that she's dropped a bit down the pecking order. Maybe it's time she does drop that championship, really, because then she can build herself back up to feel credible winning it again, rather than having arguably a lackluster run as champion, and then all the contenders feel like that they're not able to beat at that level either. It's better to have someone that say, Asuka's not being treated on top of her game, someone takes the championship, Asuka gets back on top of her game and wins the belt back. That's how you get 2 or 3 people over in one go. Maybe that is the right thing to do, but when you look at Raw this week, Lana beat a lot of the contenders that you'd say would be in the conversation. Nikki Cross, you look at Lacey Evans, I mean, Peyton Royce is someone that's been in and around but not really given the opportunity. I think Alexa Bliss is the right person to come in and take that championship, because right now Alexa Bliss is on a roll, and then Asuka perhaps can build herself back up and get the championship opportunity and maybe run once again, perhaps maybe around WrestleMania season. As for that AEW card, Full Gear on paper, it looks superb. I love what they're doing. Some of the matches have been built so well. You look with Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston, I think that's been put really well together. Eddie Kingston is a guy that wasn't even in the company 2 or 3 months ago, and he's one of the breakout stars of 2020, which seems crazy to say with Eddie Kingston. He's been around for so long on our screens as well, part of Impact, NWA, and various different promotions, but he's really sort of had this opportunity and he's grabbed it with both hands. Such an amazing promo. His in-ring work, his character work has been so good. The fact as well he's got that stable around him, which still at the moment there's question marks of the bits and pieces of what brings the stable together. We know obviously with him and Pentagon they're best friends, so that kind of works together. It's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic will carry on going forward. But the I Quit stipulation for these two really works as well. So everything they've done with that, I really enjoyed. Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, I think, has been booked superbly. They've gone through it where it's been a bit called off between the two of them, and they're going to face together now. Now they've got to the finals of this World Championship tournament, but it's been one of the best storylines of the entire of 2020, arguably the best, because as much as said in the last one with Jey Uso and Roman Reigns, that's been great in the period of months we've had it. That has been going on since January. So, I mean, you could turn around and say that that has to be seen as the best storyline of the year. As well as that, Chris Jericho, MJF, I'm loving that storyline. I'm loving everything they give us week by week. And there's so many different possibilities of what could lead to the end of that Full Gear. And MJF saying he would do anything to be in the Inner Circle. And is that going to be at the expense of Chris Jericho? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to watch this space. There are some matches that on paper look great, but I'm a bit lackluster about, and that would be, I think, first off, Cody against Darby Allin, purely because I think I spoke about this maybe on here or This Week in Wrestling very recently, saying that I thought it would have been great for Cody to have had this experience of Orange Cassidy, just scrape through it, and then them have time to almost mirror that image of what they've done with Cassidy to Darby Allin's experiences against Cody. They haven't done that yet, and I really hope they put some sort of connection with that on Dynamite this week. That would help me get reinvested back into this. I think Darby Allin would be great to eventually beat Cody for the TNT Championship, but at an early stage now, it's hard to see how that's going to play out because these two haven't really interacted so much on the build, which makes me feel slightly more lackluster. Same with lackluster with FTR and the Young Bucks. Again, with FTR, fantastic storyline leading into All Out. It's gone a bit sideways since, and I'm really a bit not happy when it comes to this stipulation that they've given us now with if the Young Bucks don't win, they can't go over the Tag Team Championships again. It's just a bit, for me, copy and paste of what they did with Cody last year. So I feel a bit with that. I would have preferred it just seeing these two teams go at it, just see the result, maybe and have a best of 3 series, because I feel that then putting this stipulation on the line makes the result almost seem inevitable. But I will save a few of these because the AEW Full Gear predictions will be dropping on the channel this week. I'm aiming to drop them on Thursday. Of course, we have Dynamite, of course, on the Wednesday, so Thursday for me feels like the natural place to do it, as on Greenwich Mean Time, so doing it at like 4 or 5 in the morning doesn't really suit me. I'll wake up in the morning, I'll do those predictions after I've watched Dynamite, and I'll drop them here for everyone on the channel. But hopefully hopefully it should be a stacked card. It should be a stellar card. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to bring. On paper, I think with the matches that they've got, it should be fantastic. We'll just have to wait and see if in execution it will be as solid. But one other quick note just before I leave you on AEW's Full Gear. Very lackluster as well with Shida, Kara Shida against Nyla Rose again. That feels like that's just been thrown together very last minute, which for me is a bit disappointing. I do want to see more from the AEW Women's Division, and hopefully, just hopefully, we'll see a bit more emphasis go on that. But again, this week in wrestling, this week I dropped that video just yesterday talking about the AEW Women's Division, how they've had a bit of the booking side. I've had a bit of a dig out, but also a bit of bad luck as well, and seeing hopefully maybe there will be a more promising time going forward with the AEW Women's Division if there is a bit of patience, but we'll have to wait and see what will happen with that going forward. Derek Stark, the egomaniac, back with us here on AskSCW, asking which wrestling company do you think is having the best storylines out of everyone? This is really hard. Out of a collective, I mean, there are good storylines in every promotion, but there are also bad storylines in every promotion. We just talked about Full Gear, what is the good and what is the bad, and there's some, stuff that I'm really excited to see. The stuff that I think is lackluster. In WWE, it's exactly the same. I mean, you look at Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, we've mentioned earlier, absolutely fantastic. Alexa Bliss and the Fiend storyline are put together, absolutely fantastic. But we still have the Mysterios, Murphy and Seth Rollins going on. So it's hard to say as a collective. Impact Wrestling, the first question here, the Johnny Bravo thing, the segment, I must admit, I was laughing along with it. I thought the way that they did it was very comedic, but at the same time, I think it was good. And when you look at Impact Wrestling, they do good storylines. You look at Rich Swann now building potentially towards multiple different new opponents. With Moose, we've got potentially against the likes of Sami Callihan and Ken Shamrock. There's lots of different variables, lots of different ways that all can go. NXT itself, I mean, now, they're doing a great job with Halloween Havoc this week. There's lots of different things that have come out of that show. Who done it? Who helped Johnny Gargano, win the North American Championship? What's going on with the new stable? We're going to touch on NXT very shortly, so I shall save those answers for later in the video. But as a collective, it's hard to say which, but what I would say is the most consistent brand, the most consistent company right now, not just getting the winners over, but getting the losers over, is going to be AEW. So they're going to be my answer for you. If I had to pick one, if you said to me right now, you must pick one, which is what you've done in the question, I will go with All Elite Wrestling, purely because I find a lot of the time with AEW, a lot of storylines are done very well, and I think that when you look at the outside of it, when the program is finished, not only as I say the victor comes out feeling better off, so does the loser. Usually more than not, they still have credit on them as well, and they don't sort of feel like they've been absolutely buried. There's only one or two occasions I can think to myself, well, that's not really helped that superstar by losing like that in that occasion. But more than not, people seem to come out and they go onto new programs. They're all at the same level. Everyone's building their reputations up. And I do think in 3 or 4 years' time from now, we're going to have what are seen as some of the biggest stars in wrestling, not just that company, in the world, will be a part of AEW, and they'll be helping building up new stars all the time. This is a slow process of what AEW are doing, and I think what they're doing, it's baby steps, but they're doing a great job of doing it. And if they continue in this vein, I think 5-10 years from now, AEW is someone that's, potentially might not just rival Raw and SmackDown for ratings, may even be the highest rating wrestling company going, because they have a lot of things that are working on their side. And I think it's definitely, if people are not watching it, then they should be watching it, because like I say that, I think they've brought a lot of old school wrestling fans who had given up on the product back in, because they are invested in the stories that are being given to them. And I think AEW have done a great job of that. Do they have some off storylines? Hey, I mentioned in the last question, yeah, there's a few matches I'm a bit lackluster to, but the ones that I'm heavily invested into, wow, they're doing a great job of them, and I can't wait to see how they're going to play out. Carmine Rocco with our next question now here on AskSCW. And who would be your choice to defeat Moxley and become the new world champion? Has to be the most frequent question I get asked on this channel, and thankfully I think I have now the answer for you. We look at this world championship tournament we've got going on. The winner of that tournament needs to be the person to beat Moxley. And if you were to ask me who is the one that should win it of Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, right now Page is on a roll. He's doing so well, but I think he will benefit more. And we said about this just now in the last question, of how someone comes out with more credit sometimes from losing than winning. Hangman Page could do with losing this match and building himself up to try and win the title down the line from Kenny Omega. The Cleaner is back, ladies and gentlemen, and the Cleaner is showing so much charisma. We've got more charisma from Kenny Omega in 2 appearances in this tournament than we've got from the last, 18 months as this babyface. Now, Kenny as a babyface tag team with Hangman Page and the Young Bucks and FTR, the storyline has been fantastic. I've said it's been one of the most consistent storylines throughout the whole year. But when you look at things, the Kenny Omega we want is now the Kenny Omega we are about to get. And Kenny Omega, it would be full circle if he was to get the championship opportunity after winning at Full Gear. He lost to Jon Moxley at Full Gear last year in a barbaric match, the unsanctioned match that those two had, which was arguably one of the most brutal matches, certainly in AEW history, but definitely in the modern era of watching pro wrestling. I think the cleaner version of Kenny Omega could be the guy to knock off Jon Moxley here, and that in the long term would set Hangman Page to go after Kenny Omega. So that would be the way I would book it. I love the fact of what they've done with Omega, as I say there. Just look at that match with Pentagon this week. It screams to me why Pentagon is not in the main event picture either. But the fact that literally Kenny Omega had the t-shirt on and within seconds pulled off that Mexican championship, showing Phoenix, hey look, I'm wearing the title that I beat for you earlier this year. The fact he caught Pentagon's glove, just all those little characteristics, it was oozing of charisma just at a very early stage of that match, and it carried on throughout. I thought that the main event of AEW this week was absolutely fantastic for that alone. And for me personally, as I say there, Kenny Omega for me deserves now. The time is right. He's been in and around the mid-card area. Now he's going towards that main event. It is now time to pull the trigger. It's time to drop the championship from Moxley, and I think he'll probably beat Kingston, but then I think Omega is the guy that should take it from him. Dylan Ketchum with our next question now. And do you want to see Pac challenge Cody for the TNT Championship? Yes, next question. Just joking. I will give you a bit more depth on it. I mean, Pac for me is a superb performer, and I think that his heel work, the stuff he was doing pre-lockdown in AEW, was absolutely superb. And I'm not out the realm thinking he wouldn't have already been a TNT champion had he been able to be around at this stage. But you look at it and say that with Pete Dunne, with NXT, he's been able to return. Pac now is going to have a choice to speak his mind this week. I'm sure he's going to, have lots of things to say, a lot of bitter things to say about AEW, perhaps the lack of mention of his name, the fact that the Lucha Brothers now, Death Triangle is no more, they're part of Eddie Kingston's stable instead. It's going to be interesting to see what he's going to bring to the table. Are we going to get a heel Pac? Are we going to get a face Pac? I still hope we are on the heel side because I like Pac with that dark sort of, disturbed personality that he's got. And I hope he's back in the mix shortly because I think that Pac would be great for AEW in a match with him and Cody for the TNT Championship. Wow, that's a pay-per-view worthy match. So yeah, I would be all over seeing this if they would actually put this one together at some stage. Next question coming from Big Jace, the ace from the hard-hitting wrestling show. And he's got a question for me. And he says that, is Pat McAfee aligning himself with Lorcan and Birch going to lead to him adding a fourth member and taking on the Undisputed Era at War Games? Well, of course, this question was actually asked pre-NXT this week. And of course, they got a fourth member in Pete Dunne. We mentioned Pete Dunne just a couple of seconds ago. Pete Dunne is now aligned with them. My answer is yes. I think it makes so much sense. It's around that time of year, isn't it, where we get War Games. William Regal famously on the podium screaming, War Games. I think we're going to get it. It makes a lot of logical sense. We have now this stable against the Undisputed Era. For now, it feels the third or fourth year now in a row. So yeah, I mean, we've got a takeover at the start of December, so it's not linked to a Survivor Series weekend this year. But I think War Games is the natural progression of where we're going to go here. This gives the Undisputed Era something to do. It gives the superstars that are aligned with Pat McAfee something to do. And yeah, I mean, we'll probably have the continued other championship matches also, but it gets a lot of people on the card. So for me, this is a potential spotlight moment here where we could put, I mean, McAfee did a great job previously, but to get these stars like Pete Dunne, Oney Lorcan, and Danny Burch further up the pecking order in NXT, I think it's definitely a potential that War Games would be a perfect platform to do that. So yeah, I think your idea here makes lots and lots of sense here. I think that War Games is on the cards, and I think it's coming to us here in December. Keeping on the Pete Dunne, Pat McAfee theme and NXT in general, we've got Mike, Italian Habs Mike in the house asking two questions. What did I think of the heel turn by Pete Dunne? And do I see Pat McAfee actually adding more members? And who do you think the masked guy was that helped Johnny Gargano win the North American title? And where does it lead in the future? Two great questions there. And of course, continue on then with Pete Dunne and the Pat McAfee alignment. I loved it. I mean, first off, personally, the fact that the explanation Pat McAfee had of the fact that he actually aligned with Ridge Holland initially and then had moved on to Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch because those guys took Ridge Holland out, I think just shows continuity. It makes perfect sense of the storyline. It takes what the storyline was going to be and actually, updated it. And I think that was very clever for them to do. And it's great for Orkin and Birch to be given this opportunity when, Kyle O'Reilly, the only member of an Undisputed Era, come out here and said, I'm going to take all three of you on myself. For Pete Dunne to then come out and have that moment, I popped out of my seat. I was so happy to see Pete Dunne back in NXT, but coming out with 2 steel chairs, I don't know, I just had this feeling straight away that jumping out of my seat, then back thinking, wouldn't it be a great place for him to turn heel right now and actually make 4-on-4 with the UE against this Pat McAfee stable? And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And I must admit, within seconds, I popped out my seat again with him turning heel. So I really liked it. I thought it was very cleverly done. And I think Pete Dunne has so much to gain here because with a mouthpiece like Pat McAfee can get so much natural heel heat. Pete Dunne is such a great wrestler and was so great as a heel as well in the United Kingdom Championship Tournament a few years ago as well, that I think personally this is going to be superb with the way this is done. And I can't wait to see it play out. I think the way that this builds, as I said in the last question, is heading towards War Games, and we'll have to wait and see where it goes from there. I don't think they're going to have other members at this moment unless Pat McAfee doesn't get in War Games, but at the same time, he did a great job at the other takeover. I think he would be fine getting in there, and I think a lot of people would want to see him get his comeuppance as well. So for me personally, I do hope there's no more members at this stage, but maybe at War Games, maybe has another member that leads them to victory. That would be interesting, potentially. I know we've discussed about it before on here, maybe potentially people in the Undisputed Era breaking up and turning on each other. What if Bobby Fish, Roderick Strong, they choose to go heel? Maybe they turn on the UE and they make a super faction for Pat McAfee going forward. I mean, that certainly wouldn't be without, under the realms of possibility. But we'll have to wait and see how the story develops over the next number of weeks. There is a theory going around of potential who could be under that mask. And speaking of theory, it's Austin Theory. And that's who is the belief. It could be under that mask. Of course, famously, Austin Theory did quit NXT just a week earlier. Theory has had an interesting pattern since coming back to NXT. He's been losing match after match after match, but he's been losing, I should say, to a lot of people who are big names in NXT. And more recently, he's been squashed a lot more easily. But he had some matches which went quite lengthy and was arguably losing, but gaining momentum and trying to gain respect. And one person that looked back in respect after beating him on NXT was Johnny Gargano. So, I mean, Johnny Gargano will look and say, well, Indy Hartwell, always liked that girl, helping out Candice LeRae. Maybe Austin Theory could be the guy to help me out. And maybe that could be something we could get there with these guys going forward. And another form of a stable could start in NXT. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense. And where would it lead going forward? Well, Damian Priest and Austin Theory would be a natural feud as well, building for Damian Priest to want to go back for the North American Championship. There's great different layers of where the storyline can go, and that's why I think that this has been done very well, and I like the fact they used the Halloween theme in within it as well. Halloween Havoc review is up as part of This Week in Wrestling this week, so if you haven't seen it, go and check it out now. Maybe check it out at the end of this video. Stick around for now and do it at the end of the video. But at the same time, I think the storylines with NXT, what they're doing right now, are pretty solid coming out of Halloween Havoc, and we're probably now going to build towards now that next takeover. So I think all of this is going to underline into what we'll get when we get to the next takeover. Maybe, just maybe, Austin Theory, Damian Priest could be a match that we could get on that card. If not, maybe it could be some sort of another War Games fair. You wouldn't be surprised to see 2 War Games matches on this pay-per-view, and then maybe Damian Priest goes back after Gargano after that. Dan and the Man Williams have our next question now, and AEW are teasing a return for Full Gear. I'm 80% sure it's Pac, but a part of me wants it to be Sting so bad. So do you think Sting will return, and how would you book his return? Well, now that is a question for you. Well, I've actually seen this video package, and it appears to me like it's almost going to be a debut. As we said there, Pac is going to be part of Dynamite this week, and he's going to be expressing his thoughts. Would he return at full gear in capacity where he's actually visibly in the ring and able to compete going forward? That certainly would have a shock value in itself. Sting coming involved, he is the heavy rumour right now. Of course, Sting is one of the legends of all time. For him to come back to have one final run in some format, I think a lot of fans would like to see it. I think Sting would bring eyes as well to AEW. It would be a clever thing to do. It'd be almost like bringing what WWE does with Goldberg. They see ratings in it. should really help elevate the new stars, so that's kind of an angle I'd like to see it come in. I think as well the fact that you look at it and say that Sting was to come in, I think he should take somebody out. I think that would be the great way to start things with him, and if he's going to come in the pay-per-view, to look at the matches to see who he could take out and who he would want to have a match with going forward as the first one. For me, I'd like it to be Cody. So I'd like him in a way to be aligned with Darby Allin. So I think that would be a fun way to do it, because Cody versus Sting, I think, would be a match that Cody would want. It almost, in a weird way, it'd be kind of like WrestleMania 31 with Triple H having the match with Sting, Cody versus Sting. I could kind of see them going down that, because it's almost like the dream match. Sting was an idol of Cody growing up. Of course, Cody with his connections to WCW, with his father, of course. I think that they could make a great storyline with that. So for me, if I was to book something, that's kind of probably the avenue that I would go down. And perhaps maybe, I don't know, he could become a mentor as well to Darby Allin, which would, of course, elevate Darby Allin up the card as well as a new TNT champion. So, I mean, that's probably what I would do if I was to book it. But am I convinced Sting is coming in? No, I'm not at this particular moment. I'm going to look forward to seeing who it's going to be. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, we'll have to look at the likes of people that have been released as well from WWE. Eric Rowan, for a long time, was going to be someone that was expected to be a part of AEW. So we'll have to wait and see if he would join in. I really hope it's someone for the women's division. I think that that's what AEW needs most. I don't think they need a male single star. I think they need a female single star that's going to do, something wonders. Thunder Rosa has now dropped the NWA Championship, the Women's Championship. She obviously is seen as under contract until 2021, but could she be about to, find a way out of these contracts? NWA have been releasing talents who have been asking for their releases, so maybe there is a way that Thunder Rosa could join AEW and not WWE, or maybe Tessa Blanchard. I mean, that would be a big name that would cause shockwaves in the AEW community. That is probably the area I think they need to focus on. So if it was me, I hope it's someone for the women's division. But if it was Sting, it would be a big deal. And I think a match with him and Cody, I think would be a natural first feud, and arguably would be seen a dream match within the AEW community. Austin Whitley with our next question now here on AskSCW, asking, with The Undertaker getting a tribute at Survivor Series, would you take an Undertaker Sting face-off just to create a memorable moment? To create a memorable moment, yes. The only problem is by doing that is that then people all of a sudden want a match. And if you're not going to give them the match, although it be a memorable moment, I do think people would be disappointed further down the line. So it's very hard to do that without giving a payoff afterwards. But if The Undertaker is going to be a part of Survivor Series, he needs to be involved in some way or fashion. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do. Sting as well now, his merchandise has been taken off of WWE, heavily rumoured that his contract has expired for months. So it looks like Sting has no connections at all now with WWE, no longer on that Legends contract. So I see this one as more unlikely, although if rumours are going around that Sting to AEW is a possibility and could actually be happening, it wouldn't surprise me for WWE to go back in and say, well, hang on, sign another Legends contract. We've got this moment. You've always wanted The Undertaker. Have that face-off at Survivor Series. So, I mean, something I wouldn't say is out of the question. Is it a dream match that I've wanted to see? Yes. But now we've had The Undertaker and AJ Styles at WrestleMania with the Boneyard match. Now we've had the last ride, and now we've had The Undertaker say that I don't want to see The Undertaker back in the ring now. I feel that the time now has passed. But as a moment, of course I'd love to see it. Would I love to see these two represent another superstar to make new stars at a WrestleMania match? I'd love that as well. It's something I did a fantasy booking a number of years ago. I think it was for WrestleMania 34, back in my old archives of these videos, that they had representatives for them going into WrestleMania. It would have been someone like a Finn Balor or a Bray Wyatt at the time, and would have been making these Dark Mystique characters as the future Dark Mystique headline characters going forward. But yeah, it's something I would have liked to see. Yes. Do I feel it's too late? Unfortunately. My good friend Ricky Sycamore, our next question for us now. And with Retribution apparently not being in favour of Vince, what would you do to reinvigorate this faction? I have a feeling they're going to be just like Sanity 2.0. Yeah, they're literally feeling like Sanity 2.0. I agree with that wholeheartedly. It feels like it's beyond repair of Retribution. I would be a bit worried to actually try and save this from this point. I think in one way the best thing to do is just disband them, whether it's a case of, Survivor Series, you make Lashley lose the US Championship beforehand, so you have Hurt Business Retribution stable that loses of this Survivor Series match is no longer a thing. I think that's something you could do. Or maybe they lose their Raw contracts, and maybe that could be a good way to go down, because if they lose their Raw contracts, they then can just appear like they were before, invading shows. They could be on Raw and SmackDown again and start actually building on numbers. Maybe they ditch the stupid names, maybe they stop having seizures, maybe they actually find a way of recruiting people and taking over both shows. Instead of having 4 or 5 members, before we saw like these 20 members, they could actually have a situation where they get more creditable names in and become a threat, like we have maybe, I don't know, like an old WCW or ECW invasion back in the day. But you look at it and say, Raw Underground is no more. Maybe they get the Raw Underground guys in. What about Dabba-Kato? What about, Arturo Ruas? Gives these people something to do. Riddick Moss, these sort of like big guys that expected big futures who are just left on the sidelines. Now there's no Raw Underground anymore. Maybe it's superstars that are not finding their purpose, their way in WWE. I mean, Braun Strowman, what happened to him? He's not even really being featured that much, even since moving to Raw. The Raw Underground stuff he was doing as well could be an interesting way to throw him in there. Chad Gable, I mean, someone now that's got, this new gimmick for him going to be going forward now is no longer going to be Shorty G. Maybe someone also has this idea of needing retribution on WWE. You need to find superstars that are going through horrible patterns right now in WWE, and retribution could recruit them, and then that way they can try and find the strength in numbers to take over. And instead of losing all these matches so weakly and poorly, maybe they can start being booked much better. But I do feel it's too little too late, if I'm being honest, with Retribution. And sadly, the first thing I said at the start of this video, I would find a way to disband them, because it's going to be hard for a number of these superstars to recover. I almost feel like that a number of them need to return back to NXT, go back as their old gimmicks, be down there for a year, and then maybe come back up. Wrestling is great with our next question for us now. And what is your favourite style of wrestling? I really like this question because it's quite a personal question, so I really like that. I am one that loves a bit of storytelling, I can't lie. I love a storyline that plays throughout my match. That's normally my favourite type of wrestling, because I like to be sports entertained, damn it. But if I had to go a particular style, I quite like technical wrestling, I must admit. I do like the pure sort of technical style. Just as, recently was watching over WrestleMania 17, and one epic match between Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, and those sort of matches that we see in those kind of styles, that is my favourite type of wrestling if we had to go one way, because I don't know, they just get quite creative with their moves, the counters, everything's very clean and very slick a lot of the time. So that would be probably my favourite style of wrestling. But I like every style of wrestling. There's not a style that I dislike or think, not for me. I like the hardcore style, I like brawling, I like the powerhouses, I like everything in its own flavour, and I like that throughout the show you see different parts in it, all involved with a storyline, and I think that's what makes the perfect blend of the perfect show. But if I had to pick one, I'm a big fan of technical wrestling, as well as watching recently WrestleMania 17. Just one more example for you, watching a lot of WCW Monday Nitro, going through the 90s at the moment, and I must admit, watching the likes of Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko as well in the Cruiserweight division, but particularly Dean Malenko, every move has a purpose, linked from one to the other, linking towards that Texas Cloverleaf. And those sort of, what you see with that sort of style of wrestling, for me, I find it mind-blowing sometimes. So for me personally, technical wrestling would be my preference over everything. Next question coming from Straight Edge Joss, and he asks, what's your take on Volta versus Ilja Dragunov from NXT UK? It's been labelled the most brutal match in WWE history. Well, I mean, if you look at Ilja Dragunov's chest, I think he would agree with that. I mean, the state he looked in at the end of that match, he had been chopped and battered to hell. It was seen as a war, wasn't it? Physical, brutal encounter between these two guys. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think a 5-star classic, maybe slightly overplayed by Dave Meltzer, but at the same time, I'd turn around and say that this match was one of the best matches in NXT UK history. Is it the most brutal match in WWE history? I have to say no. As a standard one-on-one encounter, it's certainly within the conversation. But I mean, when we look through history, there's been so many barbaric matches and moments throughout history. I don't think that it tops any of those, but certainly was within the conversation. I think it's a must-see match. NXT UK for me is something that I think has its niche audience, but I don't think it has this big audience that it could or should have. And for people that haven't seen that match, I recommend they go and check it out. It literally was, it was physical. The striking from these two, and just, you know, just in general, the wrestling in general with these two was absolutely superb. It was great for the British style, very strong style as well, type of match also, as I say there. I recommend people go and check it out. I think it definitely was good. If I had to give it a rating, if we had to go one of these Dave Meltzer style ratings, I'd give it a 4.5 probably, because it was near on perfect as a match, and it was very back and forth, particularly that closing sequence of the match. You really had a period where you didn't know which way it was going to go. Finishers galore being used there with no, you know, conclusive results. It made you start thinking, well, what is going to be the outside of the box move that's going to finish this off? And eventually, of course, we did get that. But I'm not going to spoil the result for anyone that hasn't seen it. Go and check it out. It's definitely worth a watch. Walter, Ilja, Dragunov. It's definitely one of the matches of the year, but it is one of the most brutal matches in WWE history. For me, as I say, it's a standard one-on-one match. It's definitely in the conversation, but of all time, I'd say that there's definitely more brutal moments that we've seen in history when you look with weapons and physicality and stuff like that that has been used in the past. But that's all for me this week anyway here on AskSCW. Thank you so much for everyone that's been watching and checking out the video. Remember, This Week in Wrestling is available for you to go and check out now. Of course, that is in video form here on YouTube. Going to throw it on podcast form as well on Spotify and all good podcasting platforms, so make sure to go and check it out. Make sure to, as well, to follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media links, and do share this as well with a friend. Of course, word of mouth goes a long way. Very close to 650 subscribers. Would love to hit that milestone. But thank you for watching anyway. I'll see you guys next time here on YouTube. Next week, Raw preview, and of course, we will be having the, of course, AEW Full Gear predictions video. That will be coming out on Thursday, so make sure to stick around for that. This Week in Wrestling, and as well as that, the Q&A will be back next Sunday. So that's all from me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time here on YouTube.com. Take care. Have yourselves a great day.